And first item on our agenda, are there any apologies for absence?
None, Chairman.
Yeah. Thank you. I can see a full house. Item 2, any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests? Anyone in the committee? No. Thank you. Item 3 is previous meeting is to approve and sign the minutes of that meeting as the correct record. You'll find that beginning on page 1 and 2, page 3 and page 4. Would somebody move that? Thank you very much. Item 4, any items for deferral or withdrawal?
No, Chair.
There are none. Thank you. So then, okay, we move on to item 4, is determination of planning applications under the Town and Country Planning Act of 1990. And the first item there on our agenda is at page 8, and that's at Park Forest Fach. And Simon, I believe that's your case.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, there's an update on this item. One additional letter of objection has been received, reiterating previous concerns in relation to noise disturbance from the service yard area. So the proposal's a Section 73 application for the variation of Condition 9 of the original permission to develop Park Forest Fach in order to extend the opening hours of the service access gates at the rear of the retail units adjacent to Tesco's.
Chair,
Okay. Currently, the gates are open to allow deliveries between 8 AM and 9 PM, and under this application, they're proposed to open between 7 AM and 10 PM. So effectively, there's an additional hour in the morning when they would be open and an additional hour in the evening. By way of background, Aldi have obtained planning permission for the reconfiguration of units 12 and 13 at Park Forest Fach and have submitted this application in order to accommodate their specific operational requirements. In terms of consultations, the application was advertised by a site notice and 9 letters of objection have been received. Concerns have been set out in the report and generally relate to the potential for noise disturbance to neighbouring residential properties at the rear of Carmarthen Road. In terms of LDP policies, the key LDP policies that are relevant to the consideration of this proposal are PS2, which is placemaking and place management, RP2, which relates to noise pollution, and RP3, which relates to air and light pollution. These policies broadly seek to protect people's amenity from significant adverse impacts as a result of new developments. Ian, yeah, if you could, yeah, you're presenting, aren't you, Ian? Yeah. Okay, slide 1 shows, if you go to the previous slide, Ian, the site location plan. So this slide shows units 12 and 13 annotated, and you can also see Tesco's there on the left-hand side. Next slide. This slide shows the service access route running along the backs of the properties of Carmarthen Road and at the backs of the retail units and Tesco's as well. Next slide, Ian. This slide shows the location of the Tesco service yard. The access gates are also annotated there, which is roughly halfway along the access road. The loading bay for Aldi units is highlighted with a yellow circle, so that's where the deliveries would be unloaded. Next slide, please, Ian. The top left photo shows the service road access off Ford Canore. Top right is the entrance to the Tesco service yard. Bottom left photo is the view of the serviced access with the gates in the background. And the bottom right is the access gates in the foreground and units 12 and 13 there in the background that you can see. And the final slide, please, Ian. Yeah, that shows the units outlined in red, and it also shows the points at which the applicant has undertaken a noise survey, which is highlighted at the bottom of the screen with a red dot. So the main issue in terms of the consideration of this application is the potential impact on the amenity of nearby residents, in terms of noise and disturbance as a result of the extended delivery times. There are no objections from the local highway authority. An environmental noise assessment has been submitted by the applicant. This uses baseline noise data measured in the area in order to predict the noise impact upon the closest residential receptors. The assessment considers that delivery hours could be extended as proposed without giving rise to significant adverse impacts. In this regard, the Pollution Control Division have been consulted on the application. While they did initially express concerns with the proposals, the applicant subsequently amended and reduced the hours to those now proposed, and a delivery noise management plan was submitted, which sets out measures to mitigate noise impacts arising from the deliveries. Measures include the use of the new loading bay pod with curtain seal around the outside to minimise noise breakout during deliveries. While several letters of objection have been received from neighbouring occupiers in relation to noise concerns, in light of the comments received from pollution control, it's not considered that the proposed development would result in any significant adverse impacts upon the living conditions of neighbouring occupiers, such that a reason for refusal could be sustained. On this basis, the application is recommended for approval with a condition to limit the extended delivery hours to Aldi only and for all deliveries to be in strict accordance with the delivery management plan submitted by Aldi's. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon. And on behalf of the applicants, Michael Southall wish to address us. He's on screen, I believe, isn't he? 5 minutes to address us, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair, members. Thanks for the opportunity to address you. Sorry, I'm not in person. So my name is Mike Southall. I work for Avis & Young, and I represent the UK Retail Warehouse Fund, who is the landlord for this long-term vacant premises. So my clients entered into a contract with Aldi to take a lease on the unit, obviously the subject of this application. I don't wish to reiterate officer's presentation at all, but I'd just like to offer some further comments for members' consideration. So members may be aware that there was planning permission granted sometime last year for the reconfiguration of these two units within the retail park to accommodate the Aldi unit. These units are served by the dedicated delivery yard that you've seen to the rear, which is restricted between the hours of 9 in the evening and 8 in the morning. Aldi has specific delivery regimes and protocols that marginally operates outside these controlled hours. Therefore, to accommodate Aldi's operational requirements and, of course, ensure the store can be effectively stocked, this application has been submitted to extend the time these service gates can be used just by 1 hour in the evening and 1 hour in the morning, so fairly marginal. Whilst the delivery yard serves a number of units within the retail park, the change to the timings of the service gates, it'll only be for the benefit of Aldi, and officers have put a condition on to control this. As officers said, the application is supported by a noise assessment. This demonstrates that the delivery noise during the proposed extended hours would not be harmful to the amenity and nearby residential occupiers. This has been reviewed by Council's Environment Health officers, who have got no objection to the marginal extension of the service gate hours. To ensure Aldi is a good neighbour, wants to be a good neighbour, the applicant's prepared a delivery noise management plan. This supports the application, has been reviewed by officers, and shows that noise or delivery noise activity can be minimised to an acceptable level. Officers therefore support the proposals and have confirmed that they comply with the relevant policies of the local development plan. So in short, the approval of the application is vital to allow Aldi to suitably operate, and so without doing so, the significant investment would be lost. The occupation of the unit by Aldi will improve the vitality and viability of this designated retail location. It will also create a number of jobs for local people and represents a significant investment at the renovation and fit out stage. On this basis, since there are no technical objections from statutory consultees, and the scheme represents a £2.5 million investment in Swansea, we'd urge members to support officers' recommendation to grant planning permission and extend the hours. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Members or Councillor Black? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a question around condition number 3. The service access gate shall remain locked between 9 o'clock in the evening and 8 o'clock in the morning, other than to allow for deliveries to units 12 and 13 for Aldi. So does that mean that every time an Aldi delivery comes along, they'll open the gates and then they'll close the gates. And is that going to sort of add to the impact on residents in this opening and closing of gates in those hours?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Again, it's the same sort of question. The gates, I assume, of the whole lot, and it says, oh, it'll be done by condition. But what guarantee have we got that other units won't be given, won't try and deliver within these times? And even Tesco's themselves, I can't see why they can, they're going to take the opportunity. The other thing is, it says units 12 and 13, Aldi in brackets. Very confused when I read this, especially online. And then it says location unit 13, Forest Park. And I thought it was talking about Tesco's. So it was a bit of a blurry thing. Tesco's obviously isn't unit 13, but it's the way it was originally written. But it's probably my reading, but I didn't even know there was an Aldi there. So.
Sorry, Councillor White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could I just ask, from the actual gates, the delivery gates to the properties, what is the actual distance from away from the gates and to the properties? Because I noticed on some of one of the slides you showed, there's quite a lot of trees that are screening the back of the yard there.
Hands up, no. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
I think that certainly the company Aldi's, one of the things which I find very pleasing is that almost 80% of their products are come from within this country. I think the more we buy British and support the British industry, the better we'll be as a country. And then when you see, the amount of foreign beers and food coming from exotic places, end of the day, it's we back in Britain, you must support British farmers and the like. And I just think that this is what a good thing. In the way, it doesn't matter. I mean, if these get the extra hour, we're only discussing this application. We're not discussing whether somebody else may want to come in, and it's just this application. And as far as I'm concerned, Chairman, I see nothing wrong with it.
Indeed, thank you. Got no one else, no. Just a few points, Evan, about the gates and the distance to the houses.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So in terms of Councillor Black's query, yes, effectively the condition relates to Aldi's only. So it's only Aldi's who can have those gates unlocked and can then access the area for deliveries within those times. So it's specific to Aldi's only. The gates must be locked those other times. And in terms of the noise from the gates, well, that will have been the background noise levels associated with the development was assessed as part of the environmental noise assessment. So that looked at the background noise levels and the noise activity that would result from Aldi's having these additional hours, and that concluded that it wouldn't have a significant adverse impact upon neighbouring occupiers. In terms of Councillor Jones's query, in terms of other units, well, the condition relates to Aldi's only. So if any of the other units were seeking to extend the delivery hours, they would have to apply separately to vary that condition. And I would imagine if they did do that, we would also need to see noise survey data to assess the impact from additional deliveries from those units as well upon neighbouring occupiers. So it's it's something that we would need to consider at that stage, but clearly obviously at the moment all the units there have been operating under the current regime, and it's only Aldi's specific requirements that are necessitating this additional increase in the hours of opening. In terms of the distance from the nearest property, in terms of the gates, from the gates to the facade of the nearest property is approximately 50 metres. Yeah, you can see it highlighted there. As you can see, there's quite a tree screen there, and there's also fencing around the service yard area, which provides a degree of noise attenuation, and that was indicated in the noise assessment as well. Okay.
Thank you very much. But no one else wish to speak? No? Well, members, you can see the recommendation there is one of approval. Now take a vote on that now, and over to you, Gareth, please.
Yeah, Councillor Matthew Bailey.
For.
Peter Black.
For.
Phil Downing.
For.
Alan Jeffrey. Mary Jones.
For.
Sarah Keaton.
For.
Mike Lewis.
For.
Richard Lewis.
For.
Nicola Matthews.
For.
Mike White.
For.
Andrew Williams.
For.
And Paul Lloyd.
For.
Unanimous for Chairman. Well, for.
Yep, thank you very much. That's unanimous. And then move on to item 6, which is the planning application for Tree Havard. And Hayley, that's your case, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Okay, good afternoon, members. Members will recall that this application for a 2-storey side extension and change of use of existing health clinic building, Class D1, to a residential women's centre, Class C2A, and associated works at Trehavard, Wynarloedd Road, Cocket, was reported to Planning Committee on the 6th of September 2022, with the recommendation that planning permission be approved subject to conditions. Following further discussions, committee members did not accept the officer recommendation, with an additional condition to restrict the use of the building, and thereafter resolved that the application be deferred under the 2-stage voting process so that further advice could be provided on reasons for refusal. The application will therefore not be deemed to be refused unless and until reasons for refusal have been recorded and approved by committee. Following deferral of the application at committee on the 6th of September, the applicant has submitted further information for committee to consider in response to the discussion at the planning committee, which is provided in detail within the item report of the agenda pack. This brings together much of the information referenced in the applicant's presentation to committee and also makes further commentary on some of the items raised by committee relating to lighting, fencing, parking and security, as well as provides examples and case studies of similar uses to that being proposed that are currently being successfully operated within other parts of the UK. The applicant also reiterates their acceptance to a restricted use condition that will enable the local authority to retain control over the future use of this premises. The committee report has also been updated to include the amendments stated on the previous committee update sheet with regards to conditions and additional representations received, and this has been included as an appendix to the item report. Members of Planning Committee identified the following areas for grounds of refusal of the application: adverse effect on residential amenity, impact of parking, lighting and means of enclosure in street scene contrary to Ldp Policy PS2. Additionally, members may wish to consider the impact on community safety as a second reason for refusal. The report reiterates the criteria and content of Policy PS2 of the LDP, and at the committee, members expressed concerns that the building with associated fencing, lighting and security would have an adverse impact within the street scene. The applicant's letter indicates that the design of the centre will look like a residential home, both on the inside and outside, and has provided some additional information in respect of the management of the facility, as well as the fencing and lighting details. The applicant's agent has also confirmed that the existing access onto Wynarloedd Road from the application site does not form part of this application and will be retained by the Health Board. However, based on the comments of the Planning Committee, if members are minded to refuse the application, then it is considered the following reason for refusal reflects the comments raised. The proposed development, by reasons of its unacceptable juxtaposition and potential conflict between the proposed use and adjacent neighbouring residential properties, is considered will have a detrimental impact upon the existing residential and visual amenities within the street scene by reason of proposed lighting and means of enclosure, which would be contrary to the requirements of Policy PS2 of the City and County Swansea Local Development Plan. Members also raised concerns regarding community safety, and the report reiterates the criteria and content of Policy SI8 of the LDP. This policy seeks to ensure that all new development is designed to reduce opportunities for crime. increasing community safety and reducing crime, the fear of crime, antisocial behaviour are key to improving the quality of life and well-being for those who live in and visit the county. This is further supported by the Council's supplementary planning guidance, Planning for Community Safety and National Policy in the form of Planning Policy Wales. As highlighted by the applicant and as stated above, examples of other similar residential women's centre or women's approved premises in Birmingham and Bristol are detailed, which are running within similar local communities, and it is indicated there are no issues relating to antisocial behaviour and public safety. However, if members are minded to refuse the application based on issues of community safety, then it is considered that the following potential reason for refusal may be considered. The proposed residential women's centre, Class C2A, together with the associated works, has the potential to introduce the fear of crime and antisocial behaviour into the residential area, which is considered to have a detrimental impact on community safety and cohesive communities' wellbeing goal, contrary to LDP Policy SI8 and Planning Policy Wales. With regard to the issue of car parking, at the council meeting, members expressed concerns about the impact of car parking, which was interpreted to be the concern of overspill parking occurring along Wynaloedd Road. As indicated in the applicant's statement, the car parking requirement for the proposal has been designed into the scheme, and the proposed site layout includes a car park for 7 vehicles, including 1 minibus and 1 bay for disabled users. As indicated in the committee report, given the nature of the use, it's considered that the parking provision would be sufficient for the comings and goings that would be generated by the proposed development. The authority's highway officer has indicated that due to the nature of the end use, the car ownership is likely to be low, and that the 7 car parking spaces, including 1 suitable for a minibus and 1 disabled space, would be in line with the requirements of the CCS parking standards. And as such, it is not considered that the proposal would have an unacceptable impact upon highway safety. Therefore, members are advised against including car parking as a reason for refusal. There are also suggested conditions regarding the submission and approval of a construction traffic management plan and a delivery and service management plan to reduce any impact on the wider area. As mentioned above, at the committee meeting on the 6th of September, there was a debate around the classification of the application under Class C2A of the Town and Country Planning Use Classes Order, which puts uses of land and buildings into various categories known as use classes. And within each use class, permission is not required to move from one use to another. The proposed use as a residential women's centre falls within Class C2A, secure residential institution, which includes a number of uses such as youth offenders institutions and detention centres. As indicated in the applicant's statement, there would be no intention to move away from the proposal to be in a residential women's centre, and if the committee were minded to approve the application, then the applicant would have no objection to the imposition of the restrictive condition on the use. A condition preventing other uses within Class C2A would meet the test set out in planning conditions, and if committee was so minded, a planning condition could be imposed. Members are advised that if the application went to appeal, there would be no guarantee that an inspector would apply this condition if they were indeed minded to approve the application. In conclusion, the original report to Planning Committee on the 6th of September 2022 recommended approval of the application, and the local authority have received no evidence to change this recommendation. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval in accordance with the recommendations set out in the report and subject to conditions. However, it is recognised that the committee may not accept the officer's recommendation, and should this be the case, any decision to refuse the application will need to take into account the advice given above in relation to the possible reasons for refusal, and details contained within the updated committee report as appended. Members will also need to be satisfied that evidence to support any reasons for refusal can be produced. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, I got first from the applicant, Phil Baxter, and then Chris Jennings, in that order. Right, okay.
Thanks.
Thank
Okay,
you.
yeah, we might switch the order if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we discussed this at the last meeting. It was a rather long debate. Can you explain now? I know the 2 voting system. We voted against the officer's recommendation, which was for granted. Then it went away for reasons. Can you explain why the debate is opening up again?
would have recognised that every member was totally against it. And I thought the object of the exercise was for them to come back with reasons to support our refusal, not going over the ground that was there before. It's like a second go at the cherry, and I just think that we had a full discussion. It went on for quite some time, and this is to rerun it again. I don't think that's good enough, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall at the last meeting, the planning officer. Sorry, apologies. Members may recall at the last meeting, at the end of the debate, officers recommended invoking the two-stage voting process, and as it's clear in the agenda, in every agenda that members receive, applications are not deemed refused until the reasons for refusal have been recorded and approved by members. And this is very important because if members, as they're entitled to, want to vote against the officer's recommendation, the applicant will be entitled to appeal. So the council must ensure that the reasons for refusal are robust and can be defended at that appeal, and they must be planning lawful reasons. Otherwise, we could also be open to a judicial review challenge. So that is why the procedure, when there's a vote against officer recommendation, to invoke the two-stage voting process so that all these issues can be considered and worked up into another report as has been presented to you today, so that you can consider the reasons for refusal before you decide which way you will go with the application. Okay. Thank you.
According to the page here on two-stage voting, the last paragraph says, where members are unable to reach agreement on reasons for refusal or appropriate conditions as detailed above, members should resolve to defer the application for further consultation. Now, my recollection of the last meeting is that we did have reasons and we agreed those reasons, and we just sent the officers away to put those reasons in suitable language. Now, what we're doing here now is reopening the debate instead of doing what we instructed the officers to do, which was basically to finesse the reasons we gave at the last meeting, which we all agreed on, and to a stage where it's in acceptable language.
As I recall, the officer recommended the two-stage voting process, and members proposed deferral of the item. So as it is deferred, it isn't decided until the reasons have been worked up, and members voted on the deferral and voted to defer it to today's meeting. So, thank you, Chair.
That's my recollection of the meeting. Yeah. So okay, right. Sorry about
Chair, can I come in?
Sorry, Councillor White, beg your pardon.
Yeah. I'd just like to endorse what Councillor Black said, because we obviously put forward the reasons why we said for the refusal, and the officers were just going back as a point of clarity to look at the reasons we give and to come back with the appropriate wording for it. So that was my understanding of the last meeting, Chair.
Councillor Keaton.
Oh, I actually thought it was that they were going to come back take our concerns away and then see if they could reassure us. So I was quite reassured, actually. Thank you.
If I could just clarify, Chair, obviously when an application is reported to members, members are not obliged to accept the officer recommendation. Where an application is for approval and members don't accept that recommendation, then, as has already been explained, reasons for refusal have to be put forward. The reason for the two-stage voting process is to ensure those reasons can be evidenced and that members are fully aware of the implications if committee makes a decision that can't be supported. As you'll be aware, members, an applicant has the right of appeal against the refusal, and if that right of appeal is exercised any appeal hearing, an inspector will expect the authority to produce evidence to support its decision. So the application was deferred under the two-stage voting process. There was a vote last time to defer under that process, and your officers have produced a report outlining reasons based on the issues raised by members. I just want to clarify, it's not officers' responsibility to produce the reasons for refusal. It is for members to confirm those reasons. We provided advice, and on the three areas that members identified last time, we've provided, certainly for two of the three, we provided possible reasons for refusal. As officers, as already been explained, we consider the application should be approved, but clearly that's a decision for the committee, not for officers. All I would ask members, when they consider the reasons for refusal, can you evidence those reasons? If it goes to appeal, can the council, as the local planning authority, produce evidence to support those reasons for refusal? And if members think they can, then it's perfectly reasonable to refuse it. If we can't produce evidence, then as an authority, we could be the subject of a cost application. And that's why the two-stage process is brought in, so members are fully aware of the issues and can fully assess whether those reasons proposed and discussed previously are capable of being defended at appeal. Now, an inspector may not support the authority and may allow an appeal, but the key issue in terms of costs is, has the authority been able to produce evidence? An inspector may consider the evidence and will consider whether the appellant or the authority's evidence is more compelling and make a decision accordingly. The key issue is to be able to produce that evidence, and that's why the report is produced, really, to set out for you what those reasons could be and to allow you to consider, can you support it in terms of evidence. We have had this situation before, and I know in the past, both parties, both the applicant and objectors, have addressed committee following the additional report. Obviously, it's a matter for the chair, but it isn't the first time that this would have happened.
No, definitely. We've been here before. So, okay, so where were we? You wanted to be first, Mr. Janice, yeah? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Fascinating process we're involved in as well, so I'm learning a lot about it. Thank you again for the opportunity to address you. I'm Chris Jennings. I'm the Executive Director for His Majesty's Prison and Probation Service in Wales, and I'm representing the Ministry of Justice in relation to this application. And I want to use this opportunity to address the misconceptions and present evidence, which has been already mentioned quite a lot, which demonstrates this application should be approved in line with your own officer's recommendation. I will cover how the centre will not increase crime in the area, how it will, and I look forward to the evidence to the contrary, and how it will support the evidence to the contrary, how it will support the community of Swansea, and how we want to be a good neighbour within the community. An important part of our job as the Ministry of Justice is to prevent crime and to make communities safer. Within His Majesty's Prison and Probation Service, our whole purpose is to protect the public and change lives. It's what we do every day. It seems slightly odd to me, somebody who spent nearly 20 years in this career, the idea that we would be proposing to invest £10 million to support the people of Swansea is going to somehow increase crime rather than do the opposite, which is cut it and address the root causes of crime. We're trying to reduce crime that already exists in your community, not bring more, and we're trying to prevent further victims. At the heart of our search for a suitable site for the centre has been identifying where the need is greatest and where we feel we can make the most impact in terms of turning women's lives around and improving communities. The women we're looking to help already live in your community. There are 134 women on probation in Swansea and 33 in prison from Swansea. 18 of those are serving short-term sentences and would be eligible for the Residential Women's Centre. These are real women's lives that are already being affected. That is more than half of the women in prison from the Swansea area that could be better rehabilitated in their community. These figures show you there are high levels of women in Swansea who offend and a large proportion who need this service, and we want to help Swansea address this problem. If you reject the application, vulnerable women will continue to be sent to prison many miles away for short sentences for minor crimes. And the evidence tells us that many of them will return to your local communities and continue to offend. Their lives and those of their children and families will continue to be disrupted, and so the cycle continues. The current system isn't working, and we need to do something different. Rather than locking these women up, we need to work with them in a suitable rehabilitative environment within their own community to sort out the reasons why they're committing crime. This is an opportunity to do that. The approach we are taking for the centre is that it needs to be in a quiet, non-rural, established community that is close to the necessary amenities and services, like other residential women's centres in communities throughout England. And you've seen the evidence in the reports that they don't cause issues in their local communities. Cocket provides this, being a quiet and safe residential community with necessary amenities between 10 and 30 minutes, short work or short bus ride away. I know people are concerned about what the building will look like, but it's not what people are thinking, as our application demonstrates. We've been clear this is not a prison, and it will look and feel like a residential home on the inside and outside. Recommendations relating to fencing, lighting and CCTV have been put forward by the Designing Out Crime Officer, but we will take a balanced approach to making sure that this looks and feels like a proper residential facility. Concerns were raised last time about the proximity to the pub. However, as we all know, there are pubs in all communities across Wales, and being close to a pub is likely to be unavoidable wherever we put this centre. Women need to get used to living in a normal community setting where there will be pubs and other such things nearby. There is no evidence that being near a pub will mean an increase in any issues. There's no evidence that suggests that the centre will result in an increase in crime, but I have seen evidence that shows centres such as these don't increase crime levels. We already run 4 approved premises in Wales with supporting high-risk male offenders, and there are other residential women's centres being run in England and based in much more densely populated residential areas than the site we're proposing. And they do not increase antisocial behaviour or risks to public safety, no evidence. And we're aware there is already existing antisocial behaviour in that area and around where the site is. And the longer the site remains undeveloped and unoccupied, they're not going to go away. The permanent presence of probation staff in the area is likely to lead to a reduction in antisocial behaviour. We are professionals working in this space, and we have excellent relationships with the local police who are committed to ensuring this centre works. Small residential women's centres, such as the one as we are proposing, have a really good success rates in other communities like Cocket, and the evidence shows that misconceptions about any negativity that might have gone on in the local communities have been proved wrong once the centre is up and running. And I've given you the evidence to why this facility is needed in Swansea. We want to reduce crime, prevent victims, and improve the lives of people living in your local communities. I'm going to leave you with just 2 quotes before I hand over to Phil. One is from a parish councillor in Stroud, who's been the district councillor for 19 years for Brinscombe and Thrupp. Within his community, the Nelson Trust have a residential women's centre, as well as other residential centres for women and men with addiction. Throughout this time, there have been no problems caused to local residents within where the centres are located. It is important that the most vulnerable in society can be supported within the local community, as they will eventually need to be reintegrated into that community or elsewhere. And a final quote from Dr. Matt Home, who runs a residential women's centre in England. In the 9 years of operating our centre, we have not had to make any calls to the police, nor have we received any complaints from local residents about the women living here or accessing our day services. One of our local residents is a community volunteer supporting our women, and myself, my wife and my children also live next door to the site with no issues. Phil.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. I represent the MOJ as planning agent in relation to this application. I'm here to reinforce much of what has already been covered by the officers in their report and presentations, and to emphasise why in planning terms the proposal should be supported. As officers have advised, the C2A use class is a residential use class by character, and thereby locating such a use in a residential area in purely land use planning terms is the correct approach. The MOJ have previously made representation about restricting the use of the premises to that of a residential women's centre to reflect the nature of their proposals. It's noted that a motion to insert a condition reflecting this use was moved by committee last time, but unfortunately was not fully supported. We note that officers have included the wording of such a condition in today's report, and I'd strongly urge committee to take on board this wording and exercise your right as committee to control the nature of the use with such a condition. Much has been said about whether the location of the site is sustainable. However, I'd remind committee that the site is in the urban area and forms part of the wider strategic allocation for development in the LDP, and which would have gone through a rigorous sustainability assessment as part of its allocation. The nature of the use is such that traffic movements to and from the site will be limited during the operational phase. As it's been explained in the submission package, residents of the facility would be able to be transported to and from the premises by minibus, and there's provision in the parking layout for a minibus bay. Just wanted to emphasise that point. Mr. Jennings has already talked at length about the management of the facility and the perception of antisocial behaviour and the fear of crime, and therefore I won't make any further representations about this. Could I ask committee to refer to images on the screen that the MOJ have helpfully sent over to assist committee in your deliberations? First image is a computer-generated image of what the front of the building would look like. The existing building is on the right and the new extension is shown on the left. As you can see, the proposals are of a domestic style and materials will be contemporary whilst being sympathetic to traditional vernacular. The second image, if you could show the second image, is of the side of the building when viewed from the garden area of the property. Again, the MOJ are very keen to create a residential and homely feel to the development. The third image is an impression showing the intent for the communal kitchen area within the development. Next slide, please. During the last meeting, representation was made about the privacy implications of the development and separation from neighbouring properties. The project architect has helpfully prepared a plan showing the distances between the proposed building and the nearest properties. The site boundary is also shown on this image. As you can see, the nearest residential building is more than 40 metres away from the proposed building, which far exceeds the 21 metre window-to-window standard normally applied in planning terms. In terms of slides 4 and 5, which are the next two slides, these are images that have already been included in your committee papers, and Mr. Jennings has already talked about these premises. Eden House, the first one, and then the second one is Anna Wim House, which are premises which successfully operate within residential settings and close to existing homes. The next slide illustrates the type of bollard lighting that will be used for the access drive and the parking area. This will be low level and subtle. Furthermore, in terms of the next slide is the intent for similar pole lighting as that would be found in a residential setting. 4 of these columns are proposed, albeit it's noted that your officers have recommended a condition to be imposed which would control the nature of lighting on the site. This is very important because as committee, this ensures that local authority which retains control over how the facility looks. The final slide then is intended to show you the type of fencing that's proposed for the site. This is proposed at 2 metres in height and is the type of fencing you might expect to see at local authority schools, albeit school fencing is normally higher at 2.4 metres. Such fencing and the heights proposed is not uncharacteristic of a residential setting, and it's important to reinforce that this fencing will not extend along the street edge, but it will run along the side of the building and be set in a considerable distance away from the site boundary, so it will not be visually conspicuous. Finally, I just want to make some factual statements about tree impacts that were raised. The submitted tree reports demonstrate that 12 trees are proposed to be removed. 1 tree is a category B moderate quality tree, 6 trees are category C low quality trees, and 5 trees are a category U tree. In other words, those that should be removed irrespective of the proposed development because of their current condition. The council's tree officer advised that he's happy with the proposals, and the proposed replacement tree planting is in accordance with the council's standards. This will help the MOJ achieve a BREEAM excellent development, as well as achieve biodiversity net gain for the site. Thank you for your time, Chair and Committee.
Thank you very much. And now we have like 4 speakers. Who's going first? Right, thank you. And thank you. Cheers. And you got, again, similar time between you as the...
That one. Can you hear me now? Thank you. Thanks again for giving us the opportunity to speak today, Chairman and members, although a bit unexpected. This planning application continues to have a detrimental effect on our long-standing community, with elderly residents continuing to live in fear of increased crime being brought to the area and parents being concerned for the safety of their children walking to school. There are individuals in the community under treatment orders for mental health conditions, and all of these represent the most vulnerable in society, and the health, well-being and safety of these people are the committee's paramount consideration today, because the MOJ still cannot provide any concrete assurance for the residents' safety, because this is a new, never before been tested secure residential unit for Wales, and police are far too stretched to deal with any incidents as a priority. Therefore, placing this facility in the middle of our quiet community would be negligent and placing vulnerable people at risk. The MOJ says a need for this secure residential unit in Swansea. They identified Swansea as being the place in greatest need. They want it based in an area where large numbers of women will benefit. Why then did they go to Newport and Porthcawl first? Why didn't they come to Swansea first? They obviously had to scrap those plans for Newport and Porthcawl after considerable public and local council opposition, so they've chosen Swansea as a last resort. There was no public consultation seeking our views, despite the MOJ's new statement saying they'd undertaken a letter drop to 300 local houses. This is completely untrue. No letters have been sent by the MOJ to any Cocket residents who are most affected by this application. And I specifically asked the MOJ at the drop-in meeting why we'd not received such letters, and they stated they were doing things differently with Swansea. Myself and other residents have emailed the MOJ asking for specific information under the Freedom of Information Act pertaining to this application. But again, the MOJ have failed to disclose anything despite promises to the contrary. This continually demonstrates there's no openness or transparency from the MOJ. Instead, they're now resorting to dishonesty to push this application through and mislead the committee. The MOJ state they've highlighted 18 women, all local level offenders, as potential residents of Treharvard who are already living in the area. If this is the case, why can't these women attend a day centre elsewhere for their treatment? Why do they have to be housed in a Class 2 secure facility in our quiet community if they pose no risk? The MOJ continues to fail to address what actual benefit the centre would bring to the local community and what impact it will have upon its vulnerable members. With offenders and family members walking freely amongst us, they say they want the centre to be homely, reduce negative impact on offenders' children and families, but this only benefits the offenders, not us. So despite accusations to the contrary from the MOJ, our continued accurate objections to Treharvard site demonstrate that despite the MOJ's further attempts today to minimise all aspects of their application, absolutely nothing has changed. The MOJ's proposal and its use remains wholly unsuitable for our populated community of vulnerable residents, and it will have a significant impact on the community, risking our health, safety and well-being. Finally, I just want to repeat that at the last meeting, the committee discussed putting a restriction on the Class 2 application to ensure it could not be turned into any other setting in that category at a later stage. A vote took place amongst you members asking if you would approve the planning application with this added restriction, and you voted against it. You then voted on the original application without additional condition, and again, majority voted against it. So I trust that this decision will still be supported today, because despite the MOJ's attempts to sugarcoat and play down every single one of our objections against this application, nothing has changed. The fact remains that it will still be a secure women's prison in all but name. So we're asking you again today to do the right thing and uphold the decisions you made at the previous meeting and confirm your rejection to this application and provide the necessary valid reasons for rejecting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair and members. First of all, I'd like to point out that absolutely nothing has changed since the last meeting when this development was voted against by 11-1. Cocket is still a quiet residential area made up of young families and elderly, and we are all feeling extremely vulnerable with the prospect of having a prison on our doorstep. This is having a significant effect on the mental health and well-being of us all, not forgetting the vulnerable mental health patients in Kevin Coed and the terminally ill children at the cancer charity. I personally have 2 young granddaughters who are at a very impressionable age and who cut through this site to and from school. It scares the life out of me that they could come into contact with these addicts on a daily basis. Whilst the MOJ did afford us a drop-in centre, I'm sure our ward councillors will vouch for me when I say this was only because of the constant lobbying from us local residents. We were promised to be sent further information, but even after formally requesting this, it's not been received. The next we hear from the MOJ was at the meeting on the 6th of September, and here we are today. Does this really sound like ongoing engagement with local residents? Because it certainly doesn't feel like it. I noticed that the MOJ provided 2 photographs showing residential centres slap bang in the middle of residential areas. However, the first one, Eden House in Bristol, is an approved premises and is for women that have served their sentence and have nowhere to live or no job to go to on release from prison. They go there and get help. The second one is Anwim Residential Centre in Birmingham. This is a day centre for vulnerable women, and they offer treatments and therapies for any vulnerable women. They don't have to be women that are in the judicial system, they can be anybody. And to even try and compare these with the proposed site in Treharvard is like comparing apples with pears. On the 26th of July, there's an article here to say Treharvard is the first of its kind in the UK. Therefore, there is nothing to compare it with and no statistics available to prove that it will work or what problems it will bring with it. And MPs also expressed concern over how the new untested Swansea Centre for female prisoners will operate in my practice. And that's not my words, that's the article's words. When it was announced that the MOJ would be opening 5 women's residential centres in the UK, statistics show that of the top 20 reoffending rates in the UK, Wales had 6 areas. In order, from the highest of the 6 in Wales was Merthyr Tydfil, Cardiff, Newport, Rhondda Cynon, Bridgend, then Swansea. This explains why Newport, Bridgend and Porthcawl were considered first. The communications with residents prior to the purchase of any of these buildings backfired. The residents of Cocket were then treated appallingly and were not told anything about the proposals until after the building was bought and planning permission requested. This absolutely stinks. I see no signs of engagement with the local residents anywhere in this underhanded process by the MOJ. Our homes are meant to be our sanctuaries where we feel safe, secure and relaxed. We no longer feel this way. Councillors, I cannot emphasise how stressed, worried and at risk we have felt as a community over the past 4 months and will continue to feel until we are assured that this development will not go ahead. I beg you from the bottom of my heart to stay with your original decision and vote against this proposal, as absolutely nothing has changed. Thank you.
Mr. Cunningham, yeah.
First of all, thank you, Chair and members. I'll touch again on somewhat to be said and apologise for that, but I reiterate what I said in the last appeal. To place this prison in a residential area is tantamount to pouring petrol on an open fire. Coupled with the experience of 13 years working alongside people with drug and alcoholic addiction, I'm witness to the misery they cause to law-abiding citizens. The Ministry of Justice claims this development is to avoid them from going to a normal prison and for their relatives and children to be able to visit. So why can't they be tagged? This way the children will not be pulled from pillar to post. Thus the fact that the £10 million can hopefully be redirected to the health service and then cut ambulance waiting times from 20 hours. The residents of Cocket cannot be tagged with a NIMBY label, not in my backyard. They are against it in a residential area, an area with 3 schools, a children's cancer unit and a mental health hospital. This coupled with a police force almost unable to cope with the current problems in the area, let alone have their prison to add further problems. Whatever the result at the end of the day, I think there should be an external investigation on the way this development came about, without the residents being aware or in fact any local councillors. Also the fact that the Senate member publicly stated that they are pleased that this prison is going to Swansea. We are not objecting it to going to Swansea, we are objecting to going in a residential area. If this is democracy, then this must raise the question of whether we need a Welsh Assembly. I ask and implore every councillor sitting here today that you initiate bringing in an ombudsman to investigate this backdoor approach by the Ministry of Justice and show your duty of care to the residents of Cocket community and beyond. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't take up too much of your time, but thank you for giving me the opportunity today. I'm here to represent some of the houses that surround Trafford: Valley High, West Winds, Edge Hill, Georgian, most notably Badger House and 2020. They will have their gardens overlooked by the proposed garden area to the side of the building due to the elevation according to the proposed site plan dated 29th of July 2022. There isn't much more that I can say that my fellow neighbours, along with Mr. Stuart Owen and Councillor Mike Dirk, didn't highlight during the last meeting, and those points have not changed since the report following deferral. However, there are a few points I would like to make. Further investigation into the locations of the 2 centres already established in England highlighted the following. Anawim Centre in Birmingham, quote, "The area containing Mary Street, Balsall Heath, Birmingham contains a higher than average level of social housing, 49% of household spaces. Google Maps shows the building surrounded by a mixture of houses and businesses. The street seen in the picture is at the rear of the building. The front faces business properties." Eden House, Snowdon Road, Bristol, quote, "Snowdon Road, Bristol contains a higher than average level of social housing, 34% of household space. The national average for social housing is just over 18%. Both of these examples are available for you to look for yourselves on streetcheck.co.uk. These are hardly similar situated sites. Why are they not located in affluent neighbourhoods like ourselves? The proposed building could be deemed aesthetically fitting for the area. Its use is not. The police design and out crime officer recommends that the building is to be protected against the risk of vandalism, burglary and ram raiding. Do we deserve to have these risks imposed on our street? The biggest concern that the applicant cannot factor is the impact that family and friends of people who live chaotic lives could bring to our side of the fence. They will not be accountable for these people, and we will have to bear the impact, relying on already stretched and at times misused police force. Finally, I'd like to echo a point made by Councillor Mike Dirk last month. committees change, authorities change. There cannot be a risk of future planning authorities relaxing control over the future use of this building. Diolch am gwrando. Thank you for listening.
And then Councillor Locke, one of the local members. Then I got Councillor Elliot King is with us as well. Thank you.
Am I on? Yes. Right. Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful for the opportunity to address the committee this afternoon. First, I would like to say that I'm in favour of the residential unit for women in principle. My objection is to its location. I would like to support the comments made by Councillor Mike Dirk. This development will have a substantial impact on the visual amenity of the semi-rural location. The building grounds are not secure and will require security measures. High pole security lighting will be required on One Arvidge Road. Further, a 2-metre fence and an automated gate will be required. Also, the development will be contrary to the local development plans. The MOJ has indicated that there should be a minimal problem with antisocial behaviour, but I'm not convinced that the mitigation measures are adequate. This development will be only a very short distance from a pub. MOJ have said that consuming alcohol will not be allowed, but how is this to be controlled? The staff at the Cockett Inn pub cannot be expected to control this. Finally, though this is not a planning criteria, almost all the residents are against this development. Only one person has so far given his support. I thank the committee for allowing me to state my objections to this planning application this afternoon. Thank you.
Councillor King, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And can I firstly extend my apologies to the committee for not being present in person. I'm suffering with a quite bad cold at the moment. I wanted to minimise spreading any germs around, but I'm again speaking on behalf of all the Cockett councillors this afternoon, and I think it's fair to say that we share some concerns with committee members around this process, and it seems to us unfair that the applicants were given opportunity to give further submissions in writing, but that was seemingly extended to residents or to members around that. And again, I want to emphasise that the last planning committee, following representations of their serious concerns, not misconceptions from residents and from all members in both Cockett and Sketty, the committee did vote to reject the application, and some reason was given for that. And I think the public record of the video recording of the meeting would show that occurred. I would say that I don't think anyone is disputing the reason why a centre such as this is needed. It certainly is. The concerns, as has been stated by others, are that it's the location that's been chosen to have this centre. And it's very concerning to us as ward members to hear how the genuine concerns and worries of our residents have been dismissed really as misconceptions, and there hasn't been any further engagement from the Ministry of Justice since the last meeting. And it does lead us to serious concern of what the relationship between such a centre and local residents might be if there was approval of this. As was mentioned, I think we've heard some very good representations from local residents, both at the last meeting and at this meeting, with extensive evidence as part of that. Councillor Dirk also gave an extensive submission at the last committee meeting with clear evidence and reasons given around the reasons for rejection. I won't repeat that, but I wanted to emphasise a couple of points that have been made in the report. Again, I don't think there's any misunderstanding about security measures. The applicant statement on page 3, which is 2.4, refers to there being a misunderstanding around this proposed in the Designing Out Crime Officer's report. But in fact, it's not that report that exacerbated the fears. That originally came from the planning and design statement of the applicant from May 2022, which referred to security concerns in a number of places, and also on the original site plan, specifically looking around the building grounds not being secure and needing perimeter fencing security measures, the need to provide clear and direct wayfinding around the site whilst maintaining privacy and security, the new perimeter fencing and planting installed as a site-wide security strategy, And the superseded site plan refers specifically to the high pole security lighting on the Wanalaith Road side of the site, as well as the 2-metre high anti-climb fence, which I accept is something that we see around schools, but there's not something that's currently present within the site and will obviously have an impact on the vision there and the amenity. Also of real concern is that the report stating that there have been minimal issues related to antisocial behaviour. But of course, in the examples of other centres, it goes on to suggest that this is due to security measures that have been put in place, such as CCTV cameras, video doorbells, as such that act as that deterrent. And this reinforces the need for security measures to be there, which have things that have caused a lot of concern. And moreover, this confirms that there could be issues of antisocial behaviour. And this is something that's emphasised. As has been referenced, policy PS2 of the Swansea Local Development Plan is very clear, and we fully support the reasoning for rejection given in 4.3 of the report. Attention was also brought to the Local Development Plan policy SI8 around community safety, where local authorities have a legal obligation to consider the need to prevent and reduce crime and disorder in decisions that are taken, and this is very important. However, the report claims that there is no antisocial behaviour issues, but that is not in fact correct, and by the applicant's own confirmation. And this section does continue to quite rightly highlight the fact that a fear of crime and antisocial behaviour will be introduced in the community. And you've heard that from the residents today, the significant impact this is having on their well-being and the well-being of the whole community. And this is very relevant to the well-being goal, which is outlined in that policy. The report also mentions that the other residential centres, which seem to be very different to one that's proposed, and one clearly having very huge security fencing, have minimal antisocial behaviour. It's good that obviously the MOJ have reported that there are some antisocial behaviour issues, as this is something that is an extreme concern for local residents. And I just want again emphasise the fact that that is a key issue for this. I think overall, sound reasons have been given this time and at the last committee meeting, which have been evidenced. And I would really urge members of the planning committee to stick by their original decision and to refuse the application, to accept the reasons for refusal that have been given with the evidence that's been produced. Thank you very much, Chair.
And thank you. Okay, any members wish to speak first? Councillor Luke.
Thank you. The Ministry of Defence of Justice hasn't actually covered itself in glory, because and not only that, depending on the police. I was at a restaurant this afternoon where it was burgled over the weekend. To date, they haven't seen anybody. And if that is the sort of thing you expect for a restaurant in the city centre. And going back a couple of years ago, a friend of mine opened a business in Orange Street. He spent about $250,000 on it. The mistake he made was next door was the probation office. And it ruined his business. The only good thing was he was a Marine and he could handle some of the troublemakers that were around there. But for him and for his customers, it was a constant, this is city centre and the probation office was there and the trouble he had. And in the end, to my eye, as he was an ex-Marine, I was sorry that he lost his business because they couldn't control it. And if they think this is going to be controlled over in the euro area, I don't think there's it's going to bring in antisocial behaviour. It's going to bring in big problems to the area. And if it was in my ward, I would not want it. And no matter how you've coasted how nice it's going to be and how wonderful, I just think the problem is it ain't going to happen. And if we succumb to the sort of wonderful opportunities that's going to happen there, I think the people of Cocket are going to have a real rude awakening. And I would say I would certainly vote against it.
Sir Keaton? Councillor Keaton?
Yeah, could I ask for some clarification, Chair? What type of laws would these women have broken? What crimes would they have done It sounds far more dangerous than I was first held to believe.
Yeah, we'll come back with that one later. Anyone else? Councillor Downing?
Yeah, Chair. When I read this report again, I was in a bit of a two minds about it, to be quite honest. But listening to the people speaking and the MOJ, which they weren't covered themselves with glory, I can't see that I'm going to change my mind from the last meeting. And I think the officers have helped us along with 4.3 and 5.3, which would be the reasons that we would use on this. And if any other members have got anything that could stand up on a hearing, then that could be added as well.
Okay. Just one or 2 points there then. Sure, no, nobody wants to speak, no? Hayley, anything there and to come back on?
Just what Councillor Keaton said, just to clarify, in the report it says that the ladies, who the local women who will be residing there, will have committed low-level offences with specialised support to address the root cause of their offending behaviour. I don't know in terms of, I can't go into any further detail, I'm sorry, in terms of what that consists of. It just says low-level offences. Thank you, Chair.
You got your hand up again, Councillor Keaton? Is that
Yeah,
no?
just again, no, it's not. So I take it low level from what I've gathered before isn't violent behaviour. This is not violent behaviour then. This is not people who are a danger to society in that respect.
Thank you. Okay.
Not that I know of. Like I say, I don't know the detail, and maybe the MOJ can expand on that. But from the purposes of the planning and the information we've received, it would be considered low-level offences.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Cheers. Anyone else? No. Nope. You don't say anything? No. No. Okay. Okay. So, thank you. That's what I'm going to do now. Right. See, yes. I was asking. Right. Okay, members. Well, you can see that the recommendation is one of approval with that condition attached. You see on page 28. So has everyone had the chance to read the report? I take it and read that condition that's been proposed? No? Yep. So we'll take a vote on that first. Okay.
Yes,
So,
vote on a recommendation for
with
approval
yes, with
with
one
the
of
additional
those.
condition, Chair. Yeah,
Thank you.
Councillor Matthew Bailey,
Against?
Peter Black,
Against?
Phil Downing,
Against?
Alan Jeffrey,
Against?
Mary Jones,
Against?
Sarah Keaton,
4.
Mike Lewis,
Against?
Richard Lewis,
Against, Chairman.
Nicola Matthews,
Against?
Mike White,
Against.
Andrew Williams,
Against.
and Paul Lloyd.
I'm for, Chair.
10 against, 2 for. So
There you are. That's been refused. So now you need the reasons for refusal.
Yeah,
which are
Can we propose them?
yes, and there are some suggested in your report. Yeah. So, Councillor Jones.
I propose that we use the reasons in the report.
4, 3, and 5. Yeah, 4, 3, and
Yeah,
5.
4, 3, and 5.
Yes, you say they're on page 26 and 27. Anyone else? No? Okay, then. So it's been seconded. Thank you very much. And so we take a vote on those reasons now then. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Matthew Bailey,
4.
Peter Black, 4. Phil Downing,
4.
Alan Jeffrey,
4.
Mary Jones,
4.
Sarah Keaton,
How do I vote if I'm against it, Chair?
against. Yeah.
Against. Yeah, that's fine. Against.
Mike Lewis,
4.
Richard Lewis, Nicola Matthews,
4.
Mike White,
4.
Andrew Williams,
4.
Paul Lloyd.
Yeah, I will vote with those reasons. Thank you.
Okay, so it's 11 for 1 against. Check.
Thank you.
So it's
Very well. Thank you very much.
Well, there's 2 reasons outlined in the report.
Yeah. Very much.
Thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.